Hey students, I hope everyone's doing well. I'm broadcasting today in my house. Wanted to broadcast in my garden, but it's too overcast and too humid. I do sincerely hope everyone's doing okay. I hope all your families are healthy and safe and sheltering the COVID 19, we'll call it panic, but it's deserved panic. So, what I want to do today is set up the rest of the semester. The good news is, in our class, we have one thing on the docket, and that's to write the research paper. So we're not going to have a complex bunch of different things happening. Just one thing, the research paper. Now the trick is I emphasize the pre-writing steps. Those of you who had me last year know you have to do specific pre-writing things and submit those to me so I can grade and kind of manage your pre-writing as we go along and catch problems as they happen. So first things first is I'm going to talk you through the 3 steps that we're going to do this week. Steps 1 and 2 are kind of done together. And this is basically how to begin a research project. And what I mean is when you sit down, you have a blank piece of paper, what do you do? So the first one is that you got to find a topic you love. This is important. It's not emphasized in high school. In high school research papers, you tend to just write whatever you can write because you think it's easy. In college, that will get you a D or an F. I'm saying that not to scare you, but just to make sure that we're clear how important it is that you select a topic that you have a genuine interest in. Because if I don't feel your interest in the topics I'm reading, believe me, it's going to come off in your use of language and the lackluster research and all these things that are going to amount to a D or an F. So make absolutely certain that you pick a topic that you're interested in. So that's what we're doing first. We're going to grab a whole bunch of topics, discuss what you do with topics, and then figure out what it is you want to write about. So, got my little notes down here I'm going to flip through. The thing you got to do is take a topic, whittle it down to a narrower topic, because when we first have a topic in mind, it's always too broad. It's something like abortion or the death penalty. Well, that's not much of a starting place because those are massive topics, right? So you've got to narrow it down to a kind of narrower field of interest within that topic. And then from there, from that narrower topic, you've got to get to the issue, which is the problem. What's the problem that arises? What's the controversy? Why do we have arguments over this particular thing that you want to write about? Okay. So, if I've done the picture-in-picture correctly, you should be seeing my big notes all around. So the difference between a topic, a narrow topic, and an issue. So we're going to have the big broad things over on the side. We have abortion, death penalty, gun control, and marijuana. Okay, those are the big ones that everyone writes about. Well, those are nice, but they're broad. We couldn't do much with them. So look at each one. For abortion, to narrow it, maybe we'd focus on taxpayer-funded abortion. Like maybe that particular angle on the issue, on the topic, would give us something more to work with. It gives us a focus. With the death penalty, we could talk about racism and sentencing. That's been a big topic for the last 5 or 10 years. Black people are disproportionately given the death penalty for the exact same crimes, exact same evidence that white people are let go for, or not let go, sometimes let go, but at least not sentenced to death for. So that narrows death penalty. Big, broad topic, death penalty, more specifically racism and sentencing. Or we have gun control. Well, gun control is also a big topic. You could have the need for government regulation. That could be a topic within gun control. I'm trying to think of others because I'm not a big gun control kind of guy. I mean, I'm for gun control, reasonable gun control. But it could be something like narrowing the topic in gun control. Could be something like should mentally ill people be allowed to have guns? And that's even more specific than the need for government regulation, right? So that gives us even more to focus on, even a narrower field of vision. And then finally, marijuana. That one's been done to death, but it's federal legislation, might be the narrower topic. But even still, for each of those, we have not, you'll notice, gotten to the issue. The issue is the actual problem that these raise. So under taxpayer-funded abortion, the issue is the need for religious exemptions. Should religious citizens who have a genuine religious problem with abortion be forced to pay to send their tax dollars to fund Planned Parenthood? So that would be the problem. In racism and sentencing, it might be the issue is how do we improve judicial review? How do we improve judicial review? Just means like how do we improve how we make sure that sentencing is happening fairly? That there's no easy answer to that. So that would be like the big complex issue. You might not be as familiar with that unless you're already a news junkie, and most of you at your age won't yet be. But that's a big problem, how to improve judicial review. Under the need for government regulation, the issue could be, what did a militia mean in the 18th century when the Second Amendment was written? When it says a well-regulated militia has the right to bear arms. Well, what did they mean by militia? So maybe that could be the issue. Maybe you could turn it into an historical argument. And then finally, under marijuana federal legislation, can Uncle Sam, can the federal government overrule states? Do states have a special claim on gun regulation, marijuana regulation that the federal government can't really touch? Maybe that'd be the issue. So if you notice here, in each of these cases, the issue is the problem. So you want to make sure that whatever you come up with through this process of narrowing the topic and finding an issue, the whole point is that you come to a problem that you can write about. Okay, a research paper in college is about a problem. This means that you can't just write an expose. You can't just write a paper about, all the different opinions people have about marijuana use. You can't write a paper about all the different opinions people have about gun control. And on and on. Can't do that with the death penalty, can't do that with abortion. Your paper cannot be an expose on what people think. It's got to be a position you're taking and arguing for on a controversy, on something it still is a question, something that's up for grabs that very smart people have fallen on both sides of. You're going to tell us which group of smart people you side with and why. That's the whole point of a college paper. All papers you will write from here on out will be arguments. This is because the point of a college education is to turn you into your own expert. Sorry, I keep leaning more and more into my phone. I'm going to have to get used to talking to these things. Soon you'll just be looking at my nose. But the point of a college education, as I was saying, is to become your own expert, which is why in college we emphasize taking positions on things. When you write papers, you're not just writing exposés on what other people think. You're getting us to why you think what you do and whether or not you can rationally defend your position. That's a big point. It doesn't matter if you want to believe in something just because your parents and your families have a strong emotional investment in it. That's not a good enough reason in college. You've got to be able to tell me what the smart people say on both sides of the debate and why you side with one group of smart people over another. That's it in a nutshell. Flip the page. Okay. So I've mentioned these aforementioned examples that were around me. I don't know if they're there anymore. It depends on how I do the picture-in-picture. Abortion, death penalty, gun control, and marijuana use, because I do not want to see a paper written on those things. They are done to death. Those are so overused in college. If I never saw another paper about them, I would be very happy. So those are off the table. You cannot select one of those. In fact, the research step 1 and 2 worksheet, which you have to do today and tomorrow, I don't even want you to use those as your examples on those worksheets. Those worksheets are about you trying out different issues that you might be interested in. If you haven't looked at those worksheets yet, that's fine. They're there. You can go look at them. You can even pause the video and go look at them. But the point is, I don't want you to deal with those at all. I want you to be dealing in potential things that you are potentially interested in. So forget those old, tried and shop-worn topics. I don't want to see them. Okay, so here are examples of topics that might be interesting, and I came up with this after literally 5 minutes of Google searching and a little bit of mulling in my chair. The evolution of anime. You might be able to find something interesting and controversial about that. I know I did. It didn't take me very long either. Apparently there's a big controversy about westernizing, essentially Eastern storytelling or narrative forms. I don't know. It's really interesting. Anyway, if you're interested in anime, I'd go look at that. Number 2, you could do the impact of Nikola Tesla or Albert Einstein. In other words, like how would history have been different if neither one of those men would have been born? I mean, that would be interesting. You can do one on our generation gap's a real thing. We're living in the age of okay boomer and everyone trashing your generation, Generation Z, for being any number of things. So, but is this just the normal kind of finger pointing that people always do, older people and younger people always do at each other, or is a generation gap a real thing? Might be interesting to find out. What makes some nations happier than others? I think, I know not all of you are American, but certainly American students, we should probably in our country reflect on that more because we report being a very, very unhappy country, and yet we're the wealthiest country on the planet. So maybe we should, maybe we should reflect on why some countries report being much, much happier than us despite being poorer. What about, is it immoral to be monolingual? Is it immoral now to speak only one language? If you immediately said no, I almost want to challenge you to write your paper on that because you can find some really interesting positions on that. You might actually end up finding yourself changing your mind even. What is the future of religion? That'd be a really interesting question. I would pursue that if I was your age and writing a paper. What about the increase? I mean, if you're more of a practical person, the increase in childhood homelessness in the United States, huge problem, only getting bigger every year. What do we do about it? And what are the sources of the problem? And what is the Christ-like response to the immigrant crisis at the border? I mean, with everything else that's happening, we tend to forget that there are children who've been taken from their families and are living in cages on concrete floors. What's the Christ-like response to that? Be an interesting paper as well. And the point is, you don't have to take any of those. You don't even have to try to look at any of those. I'm just trying to give you examples of things that I'd rather see that would be more original than those old abortion, death penalty, gun control, marijuana papers that I don't ever want to see again. So keep that in mind. Okay, I think I'm going to do the picture-in-picture again. Let's see. Okay. And I think we've already switched to picture-in-picture, but I will tell you, all of those topics I just reeled off, they would all need to be narrowed down. Even though I kind of stated them as long sentences, and that might have made it sound like they were more specific, each of those, if you were to write them down on a piece of paper, you'd realize pretty quickly they need to be focused. Those weren't really focused topics. They were kind of big, broad, general topics. So look for ways to focus those topics. So number one, to reiterate, you must be interested in your topic. That is principle number one. You're going to come up with several topics with these research step 1 and 2 worksheets that I'm having you do. Make sure that the one you actually land on for your paper, you have a genuine interest in. It's a question you actually want to pursue. You, not me, not anyone else, what you want to pursue. And number 2, this is super important, especially given our present circumstances, since we don't have use of the library. There must be enough information online to write a 10-page paper over it. And you do need to use the library's online link because you can't just do blogs and random websites. That's not real research. Those might factor into some of your discussion of things, but the majority of your sources have to be from academic sources, which will be the links that I think we've looked at in this class, but if not, I will repost those links. But you'll need to use the actual library. I've done this so many times I can't remember if that was last semester or this semester. If we haven't done it this semester, I'll repost the link for our library that will take you to the academic kind of academic articles archive. And then I'll talk you through that too when that time comes. Don't worry about that right now. We're just on topics. That's just to think ahead. So for right now, we're just talking about getting from topics to narrow topics to issues. But it's on the horizon that we'll have to think about sources. Okay, so practice step 1. Here's how the worksheets are going to go. So these worksheets are about formulating a research question and a hypothesis. So I've told you about starting with a topic, narrowing a topic, and coming to an issue, a problem. Well, those are only the first 3 steps. The last 2 are the most important because once you have your problem, once you have your issue, you need to formulate a research question about it, and then formulate an hypothesis about it. Wow, I can't say the word. And hypothesis, which you'll know from high school, is an educated guess about the answer. Here's what I think the answer might be. So topic, for example, I'm taking this right from that worksheet I'm going to have you look at, by the way. Topic, electronic messaging, like text messaging. Narrow that topic to the language of messaging. Okay, that's narrower, the language of messaging. Then we have an issue. The effect of messaging on youth literacy. There we go. So we went from the narrowed topic, where we're talking specifically about the language of texting, and now we're finding a problem, which is how it affects youth literacy. Okay. So then our research question would be something like, how has the popularity of messaging affected literacy among today's youth? Okay, so basically what we did is we took our issue and we just turned it into a question. That's all we did there. So once you have the issue in hand, coming up with a research question is sometimes as simple as just turning your issue into a question. And then we have an hypothesis, which is our educated guess about the answer. Messaging seems, and I love that language, that's called tentative language. It's humble. You want to use humble, tentative language at first because you don't know what the answer is going to be. If you think you already know the answer, if you're certain of it, you don't have a real research question. Keep that in mind. If you think you already know the answer, or you are so invested in a topic that you are not willing to look at other possibilities, then I wouldn't pursue it. You have to have a little bit of open-mindedness to pursue a research question genuinely. Okay. So again, this language that shows that the person is humble, that they're open to the possibility that this isn't correct, messaging seems to have a negative influence on the writing skills of young people. It's made it even more specific. It's not just about literacy, which is about all sorts of things, about reading and writing. They're specifically looking at writing. Okay, so messaging seems to have a negative influence on the writing skills of young people. Excellent. So that's what you have to do. So what I want you to do on those worksheets is you'll do this, I think it's 3 times. See if I left notes on that. I didn't write how many times it is on that worksheet, but you'll see. I think it's like 3 times. So I want you to take 3 different topics and do this with each of them. So from topic to narrowed topic to issue to research question to hypothesis. 3 times over, 3 different topics, okay? And that's the research step 1 and 2 sheet. And then you'll snap a picture of your completed work and upload it to, I think it's called Research S1 and 2. You'll see like a little points thing for it, or you should see a points thing, and that'll tell you that's where you actually upload it. Okay. I will end up sharing with you papers that I did, like parts of papers that didn't work in the past that students have written for me, and parts of papers that did, because I'd like you to have plenty of examples of what to do and what not to do. I'm not going to do that today, partly because I haven't had a chance to go up to the office, so I don't have those papers on me. That's actually the main reason. Otherwise, I'd probably be doing that today. But I'll save that for the second lecture of the week. The next lecture then will be called something like, beginning research in earnest or something. But by midnight tonight, make sure you complete those the research steps 1 and 2. And you can even start working on research step 3, which will be kind of like once you have your hypothesis in hand, you're going to play around with the hypothesis a bit. You're going to run it through some thought exercises. Don't rush into that. Don't feel like you have to have done that immediately. Work on that research steps 1 and 2. I cannot emphasize how important it is to take the writing steps, the pre-writing steps, super importantly, because if you don't, the paper is going to fall apart. I mean, it's not going to last through 8 or 10 pages. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make it 10, but I'm not settled on that yet. I understand, given our present circumstances, I might be willing to go with an 8-page paper.